Welcome to the Disability and podcast, bringing together thoughtful discussion and debate. This month, Mind the Gap's associate producer Paul Wilshaw chats with artistic director Suzanne Lofthus and associate artist Abigail Brydon of Cutting Edge Theatre about the work they do in Scotland.
Hello and welcome to the Disability and podcast. Today it is my utter privilege to be having this interview with Cutting Edge Theatre based up in Scotland. And we've got two of the people that one an actor called Abigail Brydon and Suzanne Lofthus. Welcome both. I'm really grateful you're here. Welcome to you both.
Thank you very much. Pleased to be here.
And welcome to you, Abigail, as well.
Nice to be here as well.
Thank you. So, like I just said, you are from Cutting Edge Theatre Company. So, Suzanne, can you tell us about Cutting Edge Theatre and why it was created?
Yes, I started Cutting Edge Theatre almost 30 years ago now, really feeling that I wanted to make a difference, and I'm not very good at a lot of things, but I'm okay at theatre. So I wanted to bring the two things together. So Cutting Edge Theatre exists to make a difference in people's lives, mainly marginalised, but that could be anything from community to in prisons to disabled people. It can be anything.
That's brilliant. And Abigail, I'm wondering, how did you find out about Cutting Edge and what made you want to become an actor?
Well, I decided to become an actor from a very young age. The night I was told by the local drama group, as they were nothing for me, all the parts had been taken. Then there was another local drama group, heard what happened, and they invited me to come along to join them. As they were rehearsing the pantomime, they gave me a part to play, and I was a big part of the pantomime. For a few years, then another drama group in St Andrews, where I was in a few of the plays. I done a course in St Basil College, and through them I started to inspire, and I loved it there. And they have helped me grow as a person and allowed me to live my dream. Someday I really want to act on television, something like a soap opera one day.
That is really good. And I think the whole thing about dreams is so important. And I think following our dreams are really important also. I will be talking to you about the television, Abigail, soon actually. So I wanted to know about the disability art scene in Scotland, Suzanne, because Mind the Gap's from Bradford in England. So I just wanted to know in general, what is the disability art scene like in Scotland?
Yeah, it's a bit mixed, Paul, actually. I started Inspire because that was, 12 years ago, because I found there was a real gap. There were a couple of drama groups and professional companies. So we have Lungha in Edinburgh as professional, the Citizens Theatre in Glasgow, a number of other ones, The Occasion in Glasgow. And then we've got Birds of Paradise, which is an international disability-led company. But what we didn't have was any pathway from, say, leaving school or even being at school for disabled people to access drama at their level. So about 5 years ago, just before lockdown, we started doing research to find out what there is available in Scotland and where the gaps were. And what we found was predominantly if you were in a city, there might be a class. Glasgow and Edinburgh are really well served for classes for disabled people. But when you start going out of the cities, really there's hardly anything. So we discovered that there was a lack of provision. We also discovered that there was a lack of joined up thinking. So, the same way everybody or I did, access drama was from not so much primary, but secondary, into a youth theatre, into then setting up my own company. Now, those pathways don't exist in Scotland. So there were no formalised drama training pathways in Scotland. So if when I met Abby was at college, but only able to get to what we call level 5 here, and not able to progress, so not able to do the academic work. So in essence, that was her training. And so that showed us that actually there are no formalised drama training pathways for learning disabled people in Scotland. So there are big gaps, and that is what Cutting Edge is working really hard to try and readdress and change, along with other people who work in this sector.
I think that's so important, is that there are the gaps that we really do need to change in England and in Scotland and in the whole of the UK. I want to ask you a question, Abigail. What projects have you worked on with Cutting Edge?
Well, I am a associate artist with Cutting Edge Theatre, and I work behind the scene of Enchanted Forest as assistant producer, which is run by Katie Mellon, who is my tutor. The second was when I did a voiceover for the NHS. And lastly, I co-wrote a play called Down with Love with Katie and Suzanne.
And also, Abigail, I've actually been very fortunate. So when you first started Downs with Love, I actually got to see some of the pieces of that show and I loved it. But for the listeners that don't know about that show, can you tell the listeners about it?
It's about a story of love and diversity, the challenges that I faced growing up with Down syndrome, or being accepted, but also related. I've been found as Beth, who had as a put worker named Tracy, Beth as a crush on Mark, who play at the pub. But unfortunately, Mark had a crush on Tracy. It's just like a love triangle.
And why was it important for that story to be told for you, Abigail?
I faced a situation of being accepted, but in the same that I feel rejected by a local drama group that I tried to join because I didn't tell them on my email that I have Down syndrome. Then they had already judged me before they even met me. And I feel it's important to join society that disabled people should deserve a chance to love who they want to be.
That is so frustrating. I've heard this quite a bit, Abigail, personally, about theatre companies that don't actually know the person beforehand. So I'm sorry that's happened to you. And I think it just shows that there's still a lot more work that we need to do around showing people to get to know a person before they actually judge what an actor or an actress can do. So, Suzanne, why was it important for you? Because I know you had a part to play in Downs with Love. So why was that story important for you?
You know, it's really interesting, actually, and this is going to age me a bit. But my sister used to work in a care home for young disabled people. And I was doing a pantomime production with a company that I worked, and I invited them to come and see it. And they just had a great time. And I remember thinking, why can't they access theatre the same as everybody else? And so from that, I had an idea that had a central character who had Down syndrome, who falls in love with somebody who doesn't have a disability. But I wasn't able to do anything with it because I didn't really know anybody. I wasn't really working professionally in the arts at that time. So I kind of shelved it. And then Abigail, as she said, came to Inspire, which is a local drama group in Fife. We have 2 classes. And Abby came in, and we always say, what's your dream? And Abby said, I want to be an actor. And of course, at that time, we knew she couldn't go any further. And I said, I don't see why you can't. And then I remembered about this story. So I brought this story out. And Katie Milne, who's Abby's tutor, the three of us began to work on it and bring Abby's lived experience into it, which is really important. And for me, the challenge of Dance with Love is, why do we as society struggle with seeing somebody who's disabled with somebody who's not disabled having a romantic relationship? And we know that we shouldn't struggle with it, but we do struggle with it. So that's what Dance with Love is about. It's about that relationship, especially between Mark and Beth, and how she falls for him. And then, what he feels about that and the questioning where he gets to with relationships. So for me, it's about asking the question. It doesn't give any answers. It's about asking the question, why do we struggle with seeing that when we know we shouldn't, but we still do?
So I think that's really interesting that you've said that they don't give an answer, which I think a lot of people like to go to theatre and think that there's an answer straight away. And around society, there's not. It's just our own preconceptions on stuff. So,
yeah. Well, when we first put it on, we put it on at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe. And I was testing to see, I didn't know where the relationship should go. Should we put them into a relationship or not? But people who watched it came back to us and said, after seeing the show, we went to the pub and we talked about it for 2 hours. And that's exactly what it should be, in that people just go and talk about, what do I feel about that? And why do we struggle with it? So that was and we knew them, so they don't go into relationships, so spoiler alert. But they get very close. I can't tell you anymore, no more. No. But people should be talking about it. That was the idea.
Yeah, and I'm glad that with the Fringe, that is really important about going... I love the Fringe. I'm a big Fringe fan. And you had a show that literally people were talking about, which just says a lot about that show. I want to go to about funding in the arts, Suzanne, which is a horrible topic to talk about, I know. But with funding in the arts being cut, especially with local councils in England, I was wondering, is the same thing happening in Scotland?
Yes, it's an awful situation just now. We had applied to Creative Scotland a couple of times last year and were turned down for funding, which was really frustrating for us, even though it was recommended to be funding. And I remember saying to them, look, we are no longer able to develop anything. So we have set up all these groups. In one sense, we're victims of our success, because we did get funding just coming out of lockdown to allow us to test what we call our ladder strategy. Our ladder strategy is to see equal access to the performing arts for disabled people as audience members, participants and professionals. And so we were able to set those up, but then there was no funding to keep them going. And that's a problem. So it's a bit victim of our success. And then after we didn't get funding twice from Creative Scotland, understanding that they can't be the only funder, all our eggs are not in that one basket. But it was just really frustrating for us, because it felt like they just weren't accepting, letting disabled people have their voice and have their place. And that was really frustrating. I have had subsequent meetings with them and we've just applied again. So hopefully we will we're also applying for what they call their multi-year funding, and that would give us core funding for the first time in 30 years if we're successful. But if we're not, I don't know. I have said to them, we're no longer treading water, we're drowning. And I think everybody in the UK is just really struggling. There just doesn't seem to be the same value and patronage of the arts as there has been. And yet, if you look at COVID, what was the thing that got us through most of that was the arts, however you accessed it. And constantly, when we turn our televisions, that's what we see. We see the arts. So why it's not valued more in this country, I do not know. But yeah, feel for you down south, and yeah, feel for us up here.
Yeah, certainly do. And come on, Creative Scotland. You know, this is a brilliant company that are creating brilliant work, and you need to support them, because if we don't support them, we're going to lose them. And we don't want to do that, because learn disabled art and just art in general. Come on, wake up. We need to start supporting the arts in this country. That's a bit of my rant over there, but yeah, come on, Creative Scotland. I want to know, Abigail, from you actually, what stories would you like to see more of in theatres?
Well, for me, I feel the audience to be more educated and share other people's experiences and with you and what it like to face in the real world without being judged on, and show them how capable we are with our platform to have a voice and to be part of society.
I think that's the same question to you, Suzanne. What stories would you like to see more of in theatres?
I would like us not to have labels anymore. I would like not to be saying, I want to see more stories from disabled artists, or I want to see more stories about people who live with disability. And I don't want to use the term a disabled cast or learning disabled cast. I want all those labels to be dropped, because we all live in society and we should all be able to access the performing arts, you know, as well as other things equally, so that actually we didn't have to have labels and we didn't have to go, oh, isn't Peanut Butter Falcon a fantastic film about a young man with disability? It should just be, it's a fantastic film. You know, and the A word and all the things that you guys do down at Mind the Gap. You are our heroes, by the way, and our role models, and we look up to you. But wouldn't it be nice for people to just come to theatre and not come out and say, oh, wasn't that an amazing production by those disabled people? Didn't they do really well? I would just love all of that to disappear, and just for us to have the stories of our lives being shown. So we say in Scotland, we want to see positive representation of disabled people on our screens and on our stages, but not necessarily with a big neon sign pointing, going, look at this disabled person doing this. I love the RSC, the Royal Shakespeare Company. They're very good, actually, at just making their cast really inclusive and working around their requirements. And I would just love that to happen, so we could tell stories from the past, from the present, from the future, and there not to be any labels. That's my big thing.
No, I totally agree. It's really interesting about the Royal Shakespeare Company, about the that situation that's recently happened about Richard III. I find that a really interesting conversation, which we will go on to another day. Just probably you and me, Suzanne, at a bar. Yeah. But okay. Abigail, I was wondering, you said about television, and that's one of your dreams. Do you think there is a lack of representation of people with Down syndrome on television and theatre? And if so, how could producers and directors make change?
Yes, it's almost like we have to fight for the people to believe in us. And having Down syndrome isn't an illness. Again, it's all part of our gene, just like everyone, as we are all unique in our own way. It is hard industry to get into, but it is even harder when you have the Down syndrome.
I think television is really slow. I think you have more positive representation down south than we have. So BBC Scotland, we don't have any actor, I think, with Down syndrome or disabled actor in our soap, River City, or in television, despite us knocking on their door several times. And actually, they are trying to open up a little bit about for disabled people to be kind of part of BBC Scotland, a bit more behind the scenes, a bit more behind the camera. And that was really interesting. So one of our learning disabled young company, we have a 3-year training company called the Young Company. And he really loves sound and lights and that kind of the technical aspect. So he went to that open day, but there was nothing for learning disabled. And so that is my big challenge within Scotland. On screen, off screen, behind the camera, in front of the camera. We really need this to be shaken up a bit in Scotland. And so, yeah, I will be contacting BBC of Scotland about that. We have been contacted by Screen Scotland asking us to have a look at how we can support people behind the camera. So that's a bit of a start, which is encouraging, but there's very little happening up here.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of work. I know down south, down in England, there's a lot of work with a company called DANK, which is the Disability Artists Network Community, and Triple C. And I am definitely going to get onto this case for you guys as well, because I think they do stuff all over the country, so and over in Scotland as well. So I think that's a really interesting situation. And sorry, Triple C, I love you guys, and I think as we all know, and I'm working with a lot of Triple C, so I think there's a chat with BBC Scotland to be had. I really want to know, Suzanne, because I think we had this chat in 2017 about your shows and coming down to England. And I was wondering, do you perform your shows down in England? And if not, why not?
We don't as such. The main reason would be funding, because that would need to come from Arts Council England, who there's a bit of a crossover. I'm never quite sure with Creative Scotland and Arts Council England. So Dance with Love last toured 2022, and that was a 14-date tour. We were actually invited down to Northern Stage, and we finished the tour there, which was lovely. Really nice and really great feedback from the audience. We'd love to tour down south. The play's not Scottish per se. It can be done, by anybody. And we'd love to do an English tour of it, because I think it's as relevant there as it is up here. The only other equivalent play that I'm aware of, there might be more, so forgive me if there are, is Jellyfish, which was done by the National Theatre down in London. And Dance with Love is like the step before Jellyfish, because again, spoiler alert, they do get into a relationship in that play. So we would love to tour Dance with Love, just not sure how we would do that.
I would love to see it down here, personally. I would love to see it down here. Theatres, book them. Book the tour. This is one for both of you. First, I'm going to ask you this, Abigail. How can theatre companies make their audition processes easier for actors to get into their companies?
Well, we've been auditioning for Mark and Tracy in 2022 when we done Down with Love. And there are quite a lot of actors who done very well anyway, so we decide, me and Suzanne, we talk about who's going to take the role of Tracy and Mark. And that's the same thing like before the first tour. We auditioned for Mark, and it was Stephen Arthur who played as Mark. And for 2022, it was Colin Barber who took the role of Mark in 2022, and Rachel Sell who played as Tracy.
Cool. And Suzanne, what do you think theatres can do to make audition processes easier for people with learning disabilities?
Oh, I think there's quite a lot, actually. We, as Abby was talking about the process where actually, because she was lead actor in this, we put her on the panel. It was really important that she and the other actors could click and had that spark. So that was really important. But what we try and do is send out access riders. And so to find out what an individual's requirements would be. Do they need a quiet room? Do they need text in larger print? Do they need it recorded? Do they need a video to show them how to get to the venue? There are so many things that we can do now as companies to make life easier for people who would like to audition. And it is really interesting. You know, we have another one of our young company who is a film director, a television inside, but his anxiety is so much that he can't independently travel from Edinburgh to Glasgow. So he is unable to attend any audition or interview that would help him get a step upon the ladder. So we have a lot of work to do. I think Cutting Edge is working really hard to make all our productions and all our classes really accessible. So, you know, having a BSL video on your website, sending out audio tracks, sending out everything. I think we just need to ask, how can we make this easier for you? And also when they step into an audition room, which can be quite a daunting place, we always have tea and coffee and biscuits. You know, we like to make it a really nice atmosphere and not sit behind a table and not make that feel overwhelming. So there's a lot that we are all beginning to do, and then, you know, include anybody that's working in this area, but there's a lot that we still have to do.
Yeah, definitely. Also, what is next for Dance with Love? What's the plan for the show?
When I saw it on its last night on the first tour, I kind of was watching it and I thought, you know, it feels like it could be on television. And then the A Word came out on television, and then Ralph and Katie came out on television. So Stephen Arthur, who Abby mentioned, who's the first mark on that, he has written for television before. I haven't. So he and I, it was one of our lockdown projects, he and I wrote 3 episodes of Dance with Love. We did go knocking on BBC Scotland's door, but they turned us away. So that was a bit frustrating. It does need development and needs somebody who's more skilled than I am at writing for television to work with me to get that script, and then to try and pitch it to different television companies. So that's a possibility that it could work for television. I think it's finished in Scotland, certainly for a good number of years, because it's toured all the main venues in Scotland. If we were to tour it again, it would be great to tour it down south and to bring it to England. That would be, you know, the icing on the top of the cake for us. To get it published, that might be quite good. To have other people, so I'm talking to somebody just now who has Down syndrome and is in Malta and trying to develop her story, not her life story, her story into a stage play. But, you know, she could play Beth in Dance with Love. So trying to get it published is also a challenge, because the main publishers are not really interested in that sort of thing. So, and I know nothing about publishing. So, yeah, I don't really know where it's going from here is a quick answer.
That is absolutely fine. I think that's the thing. There's a lot of opportunities for that show, and I can see a lot of opportunities for it. I looked on your website and you said about Let Me Be, Suzanne. Can you tell the listeners about that and who is working with Cutting Edge on it?
Yeah, so Let Me Be is a course that's run by Grey Eye Theatre and 1623 Theatre Company, who do a lot of Shakespeare, so Ben Spiller. And because I work on my laptop from home most of the time, I get all the CCC and the DNC emails and opportunities. And I saw this course advertised, which was exploring Shakespeare, and it was going to be an online course. So I asked Abby if she wanted to take part in it. And she had to do a video, which we sent in. And she was one of 12 people accepted onto this course, which was looking at Shakespeare and just unpacking that. A couple of weeks into it, Ben contacted me and said, Abby's knowledge of Shakespeare is incredible. And Katie and I were a bit bemused because we thought we've not really taught them Shakespeare. We've done one thing with them, but really tiny. So where was she getting this knowledge from? And actually, I could understand if Ben said she knew how many plays there were and the history and everything, because Abby loves to do research and loves checking things out. But what he said she was doing was she took two scripts. I think it was Hamlet and Julius Caesar. I might be wrong in that, Abby.
Actually, it was Antony and Cleopatra.
Antony and Cleopatra and a bit from Hamlet. And she took the text and she merged the text together to make a new scene. Now, we haven't taught her that. And so it just became really obvious that Abby had a skill there for looking at text and for looking at Shakespeare. So after she'd done the course, I had a meeting with Grey Eye in 1623 and said, look, I'd love us to run the course again and we'll pay for a lot of it if we have like half the participants come from Scotland and half come from England. But what I would really love is if you could mentor Abby as one of the facilitators.
Co-facilitators.
Course facilitator. So that's what they did. And Abby went through that course again, but as a course facilitator. And 1623 and Grey Eye were brilliant in training her. And so the next thing we would like to do with that, if we get funding, we'd love to do an in-person, like a summer school, which would be open to anybody. Maybe we do one in England, maybe we do one in Scotland, where learning disabled people can come together, or disabled people can come together and explore Shakespeare over the course of a week. So, Abby, do you want to tell us about your experience and how you found it and what was good about it?
Yeah, that'd be great, Abigail, if you can tell us about it and what it's like to actually be a co-facilitator.
Oh, as a co-facilitator, I think it's nice to give other people a chance to get to know about William Shakespeare, and you have to pick a character from the Shakespeare plays.
What do you like about William Shakespeare? Why does he fascinate you?
Well, as Suzanne said, I like to do a lot of research, and when I was in St. Basil College, I did a bit of Shakespeare with them anyway. That's how I know all the knowledge of Shakespeare.
It really does sound an interesting course. And yeah, can you tell us any more about that, Abigail? Like, what would you like next to happen? Like, would you like to do more co-facilitating?
Yeah, I do like do some more facilitating anyway, and they were talking about me becoming a tutor, as a tutor of the drama anyway.
Suzanne, I want to mention a show that Cutting Edge done, which was the Easter play, and I had the privilege of coming up and seeing the Easter play this year. And I just want to say a massive congratulations. Why is the Easter play an important thing for you, personally?
So the Easter play has been performed by community actors in Edinburgh since 2005. I started directing passion plays, which are open-air community promenade plays telling the sort of the last week or the story of Jesus. And I love them. I think it's incredible. I love community work, and I love bringing together different people who just lay aside all differences to work together to tell one story. Whatever their belief is or non-belief, it doesn't matter. And so that's what I love about the Easter play. So there were 43 people in it this year, all from different backgrounds, all working together to tell the one story. And because we didn't used to produce the play, but Cutting Edge Theatre has now taken it on board. And so to make it fit more with what our aim is, as I said at the beginning, to ensure equal access to the performing arts for disabled people, we opened up our production to some of our young company who were in the play, and Law, who's one of Abby's classmates for Inspire in Fife, travelled all the way across every week to be part of the play and wanted to challenge herself on to do more speaking, because that's an area that she struggles with. So we gave her a good speaking role, and she worked really hard on that. And in that, we had a couple of people who use walking sticks. We also integrate BSL. So a couple of years ago, I just felt I didn't want a BSL interpreter to stand at the side anymore, because that sends a message to the deaf community that they are not part of the production. So we integrate BSL into it, which in a cast of 43 is quite massive. And so 2 interpreters take on roles, and they are part of the play, and they interpret the entire script as they go through. They're incredible. We had hoped this year to welcome our first deaf actor in, but sadly he took ill, so he wasn't able to do it. So if we manage to do it, sadly there's no more funding for that production. If we manage to do it next year, we'd love to open it up even further and to welcome more people who find themselves marginalised and just on the outside of society. We'd love to get them in. We're also looking at mental health for men in that this year. There was quite a lot of men who struggled with anxiety. And so we were kind of saying that being part of a play can be a really positive thing for you. So yeah, we love doing the community plays, and they're great. If you haven't got a passion play down in Bradford, you need a passion play.
I'm not sure we do, but I truly loved coming up to Edinburgh and seeing it. And Laura's a great friend of mine, so I just want to say it was a great show, and congratulations to all the cast and the team working behind the scenes.
Thank you, and thank you for coming all that way.
I was wondering, for Abigail, what do you want next in your career?
Well, honestly, for my next career, to share the experience with other companies and just as such, like gone on TV and that sort of thing.
Well, and Suzanne, same question to you. What's next for your career?
I don't know. I was listening to Abby there. Abby's dream is to be on Coronation Street. She's even written herself a storyline. So Coronation Street, if you're listening, there's a young actress up here. We'd love to be part of it.
Yeah, and I also like to be in other soap operas as well.
She would. Any soap opera she's happy with. But our aim for Abby, as she said, is that Abby is really good at course facilitation. And so our aim would be that at some point Abby can become one of our tutors, drama tutors. So that would be something that we would, again, funding permitting, looking at that. What's next for us? Well, our young company, this is the first cohort of our young company, and they have their production at the end of June in the Studio Theatre. Which is at the Festival Theatre. And that is a devised piece called Rambles of the Heart. So they're busy working on that. Hopefully we can secure the funding to keep going. We also have 2 other plays in development. One called Phased Out, which is working with another one of Abby's participants who in Aspire Fife. And that's working with Janice Barber, who has written her life story. And Jan is a wheelchair user. She has cerebral palsy and non-verbal. And so the challenge was, when I read her story, for me, I thought, do you know what? I would never have known that about Jan, because I would never have asked her, because I would have assumed she couldn't tell me. And I work in this area. So that was a real kind of kick between the eyes for me. So we have done one development week with Jan, funded by Creative Scotland, which was great, to look at how do we tell her story through projection and movement. So it's not as verbal as Dance with Love, but it's more movement orientated and has projections. So that's one we're looking at. And then there's another one called Lockdowns, which is about a young man with Down syndrome who I suppose it's a bit like Peanut Butter Falcon. He decides to escape for a day and goes on the bus journey around Scotland. So that one might be a film. Yeah, those are what we're developing. And then if we can get the funding for the multi-year, then we will be just going gung-ho with a lot of opportunities in Scotland.
That is great. And I really want to say thank you to you, Abigail, and to you, Suzanne, for being on this podcast. Creative Scotland fund this company. End of. Don't mind any of the excuses. Fund them. You know, if we don't fund them, we lose them, and we don't want to lose this company. They've been going for 30 years. Come on. And Abigail, I would love to see you in a show. I've seen you in person. I think you'll be great, and I really want to hear about the character you've got for Coronation Street. Thank you once again to both of you for being on the Disability and podcast. And next month, Disability Arts Online will have a special guest on. So thank you once again, and take care.
Thanks, Paul, and thanks everybody behind the scenes for having patience with us.
Thank you for listening. We do hope you've enjoyed this episode of Disability And. A big thank you to Suzanne and Abigail for their contribution in this month's podcast. Previous episodes of Disability And can be found at www.disabilityarts.online/projects/the-disability-and-podcast. Next month, Colin Hambrook chats with Arthur Hughes, who recently starred in the TV series Shardlake.